you said you had a nervous breakdown or mental breakdown, something, right? Was it a nervous breakdown?
A mental breakdown.
Mental breakdown. But we never really compounded upon that. So, all right, as far as that is concerned, right? Talk about that as far as being incarcerated. What does that do to your mental health? Like even being in solitary confinement, there's been research saying that I think like after like a couple days, like you kind of clinically start to deteriorate mentally. Like especially some people being in the hole for 6 months, like 3 months at a time. Like it's like you a lot of mental illness that comes from isolation, that comes from just being around men all day, that comes from having trauma of seeing people killed in front of you, stabbed in front of you, dealing with COs that, abuse prisoners. There's a whole mental aspect of this. So we'll talk about the mental side effects of being incarcerated.
Yeah, so interestingly, segues into what I was talking about with the team. We're actually, for those who serve time, right, there's an article about the psychological impacts of prison, and we're all dissecting that article and identifying ourselves in it. So we're trying to build awareness of our trauma in order to overcome it. That's another thing, right? But the psychological impacts is deep, right? I could go on and on, right? But for me, part of what just feeling like the feeling like
There he goes. EYO Espanol on the way.
So one of the concepts is that like when you have served so much time, right, you feel abnormal, right? You come out into this world, and I think part of my like urge with building a support group was to try to like be around like-minded people, because there's this like otherness, this concept of the other, right? It's a lot of African American scholars talked about being the other in the white man's space, feeling like the outsider, the stranger. So the stranger concept is I walked with that a lot, right? Being in spaces where I did 13 years, so I'm around men talking about traveling, and they like, I just came from Dubai. You feel like so uncomfortable. You can't partake in the conversation. You can't relate, right? You don't, like, you just did your whole 13 years and your adult years in prison, right? So,
is there some level of embarrassment? Like you don't even want to tell people that you were incarcerated type? Like,
well, for me, some people do have that. They have this shame of their identity. I owned it from the gate. Like it became my advantage, actually, right? It became my currency, because some people didn't know I served time, right? I might have been working when I was at the fashion production company. People like, oh, you did 13 years. I would have never knew. So, like, I always didn't mind it, but some people are ashamed of where they came from, so they keep it deep down inside, But,
the guy that, not to cut you off, the guy that runs Jordan Brand. You know his story?
Nah.
So the guy that runs Jordan Brand, he killed somebody years ago, and he went to jail for it, but it was like a thing that nobody knew about. So he worked his way, obviously a very intelligent person. He worked his way up the corporate ladder to the point where he's the CEO of Jordan Brand, and it was something that it haunted him. Nobody knew about it. It was like a secret that nobody knew, and he like recently, like last year, 2 years ago, he wrote an article, and that was like him coming out and telling his past. But for 20 years, nobody knew his past history.
Yeah.
So it was one of these things. And like I said, he probably could have went to the grave with it, right? I guess it was before laws was so transparent where everything was, it's probably like in the 60s or something. But he didn't feel comfortable living a double life. He felt like he just, like he had suppressed it and he was just hiding it for so long that even though nobody knew about it, it just was causing him anxiety because he knew about it and he wanted it to kind of get it off his chest.
Yeah, no, it's deep. I'm blessed, by the grace of God in that way, where I was always okay with being vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? I think that we're so guarded when we come out, that we want to like protect this narrative, and it's like, nah, let people know who you are, right? So for me, I came home open to that, but I never really felt like my peoples understood me, right? So being a stranger, there's times where like I don't play with the hands. I was called too serious, loosen up, man. Like, you know what I mean? You mad like on some, and it's like I just came from a hyper violent environment, right? So like I can't just be flexible, and it took me time to like loosen up to new faces. Trust issues, right? I was questioning everybody in my bros' circle, like, nah, like, because of my own trauma, people telling. So you start to generalize, and that's delusion, right? You start to think everyone is who you experienced. That's like literally delusion. And one of the biggest experiences I remember was being in barbershops, right? You know what I'm saying? You behind the chair getting a lineup, And one dude pulled up. He was a former cop. That's the funny part. Pulled up with a hoodie on, his hands in his pocket. I jumped up, dumb fast. You know what I mean? 'Cause I just came home to a town that I took a life from, right? So those type of things where people don't understand your anxiety is the first time I hit in New York City to go to a contract, I seen like a herd of people, and it's reminded me of the yard. Like, people won't know what you're walking through. People walking past you, you like, yo, you on super edge. So those moments made you feel abnormal. Like, it made you feel broken. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, what I learned was like accepting it, I'm scarred in that way, right? It's not really what happened, it's how I react to it. Because I can't change the past now, right? It's how I move forward. But those type of things, man, are constantly walking with us. And I was just speaking at Pace University yesterday for the law school there, and I talked about the symbolic baggage of trauma that we all walk with on our backs, right? And I felt the heaviness of that trauma when I was in the school. You know what I'm saying? There was mad times I was in that school, bougie elite school, and I felt like I ain't belong. You know what I'm saying? It's like you feel like the stranger, and that feeling is an internal thing. You know what I'm saying? And to get even deeper, you know, with your relationships, right? You know, some of us got like, you know, issues with our family, our fathers, our moms, right? And if, you know, I served so much time as a kid, so like I learned that the impact that prison had on me was like the abandonment issue, right? You know, I ain't see people for so long, so you have trust issues, you know, in your relationships, you see it come out, right? And that's where you need an understanding partner, and you need to be aware of your own triggers, you know. And the good thing when I was working with the Y under DCJS, like I got to understand trauma-informed practices and how to like really like let go some of the issues I was holding on to. So a lot of it is just letting go and understanding that it's there, right? A lot of us move into avoidance. A lot of men I know, even on my team, like you become so self-sufficient in prison that you come out here thinking you do everything by yourself. And I'm like, that's a trauma response, right? You don't realize you're not in prison no more, bro. You got the world out here. You got people to call. You know what I'm saying? We had a deep conversation the other day with a brother that just did from 16 to 39 years old, right? One of my guys, again, he identifies somebody as a prospect for the organization. He's a Muslim brother. Again, diversity. We looking to diversify the team. He just did all this time. Solid brother up north. I actually know him. And, beautiful experience was that he was not a prospect to serve. He needed to be a receiver. He needs to be a recipient. He's like, yo, I've been on 5 months and I'm like, you know, struggling. I'm like trying to figure it out. He's like, I need help. And that might have been the first time he said that. Because for 5 months, he's like, I got to do this on my own. Like, there's this mindset that we have coming home from and it's because prison, you know, makes you have to protect yourself and rely on yourself. I talk about 3 battles that we experience in prison. You battling against the correctional officers. That's a whole nother culture, right? Especially you up north, you around them white boys up north. Their culture's mad conservative, right? Then you battling with your peers, right? The segregation, the dog eat dog world, the back door, right? And then you battling with your own internal demons. You know what those 3 fights every day feel like? After many years, you come home and look at people different. Your friendships, you define them differently. You know, a lot of my brothers that I like really feel my brothers is brothers who I did time with that's home now celebrating life with me, you know, despite my real brothers. But, you know, so it's like it changes your dynamic with people, you know what I mean?